November 11th, 1943. 0530 hours. Bougainville Island, Solomon Islands. Thick jungle fog blanketed the 3rd Marine Division's forward positions at Empress Augusta Bay. Staff Sergeant Thomas Michael Callahan pressed his face against the wooden stock of his Springfield rifle, eye perfectly aligned with the unertl 8-power scope mounted above. In his left hand he gripped something that would seem ridiculous to any military strategist: a dented, rusted Campbell's chicken noodle soup, can with both ends removed, and a small hole punched in the side. Through his scope, Callahan observed Japanese positions 700 yards distant, across the cleared killing field. The soupcan sat mounted on a stick he'd planted in the ground 15 yards to his left, angled exactly as he'd calculated during the previous night's darkness. At 0547 hours, the can caught the first ray of morning sunlight. A brilliant beam of reflected light shot across the jungle clearing, aimed precisely at a cluster of palm fronds concealing a Japanese observation post. For exactly 2 seconds, the reflection held steady. Then Callahan adjusted the stick by 1 inch, and the light beam shifted. 700 yards away, a Japanese soldier's curiosity overwhelmed his training. The observer changed position to investigate the strange flashing light, exposing his head above the sandbag parapet for just 3 seconds. Callahan's Springfield fired once. The observer collapsed. The first kill of what would become the most devastating 5 days in Pacific sniper warfare had just occurred. Before this week concluded, Sergeant Callahan would use variations of his soup can method to eliminate 112 confirmed enemy combatants, revolutionize Marine Corps' sniper doctrine, and drive an entire Japanese regiment into tactical paralysis through what his battalion commander would later describe as the most ingenious psychological warfare operation of the Pacific Campaign. What started as a desperate improvisation born from empty ration cans would transform into a systematic killing method that Japanese forces possessed no tactical answer for. The mathematics of death were being rewritten not through superior firepower or numerical advantage, but through human ingenuity applied to discarded trash. The journey to Bougainville started 6 months earlier at Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Thomas Callahan, a farm boy from rural Montana, had enlisted in 1941 at age 19, days after Pearl Harbor. His childhood hunting mule, deer, and elk in the Bitterroot Mountains had created an instinctive understanding of ballistics, wind drift, and patience that no military training could replicate. His company commander, Captain Harold Morrison, noticed him during routine rifle qualification in March 1943. While other Marines fired their weapons conventionally, Callahan took an extra 15 seconds before each shot, compensating for crosswind that most shooters ignored. He scored 48 out of 50 at 300 yards, with iron sights. Morrison pulled him aside afterward. "You hunt before the war?" "Elk mostly, some deer." "How far?" 700 yards with my daddy's 30-06 iron sights." 3 days later, Callahan received orders to scout sniper school at Camp Pendleton, California. The Marine Corps Scout Sniper Program in 1943 emphasized intelligence gathering and psychological impact over pure marksmanship. Gunnery Sergeant William Henderson taught the psychology module. "Killing the enemy is last resort," Henderson told each class. "Your job is intelligence. You watch, you report. But when you do shoot, you make it count. You shoot to create maximum psychological impact on survivors." Callahan excelled at the mental game. Growing up hunting in Montana had taught him that elk could stand motionless for hours, then vanish at the slightest wrong movement. He applied the same patience to stalking exercises. The final examination required students to stalk within 200 yards of instructors with binoculars. Callahan completed the stalk in 9 hours. The instructors never saw him until he stood up and waved after making his simulated shot. Henderson pulled him aside after graduation. "You're good, but you're thinking like a hunter. The Japanese aren't elk. They adapt. They learn patterns. The sniper who survives isn't the best shot. It's the one who never does the same thing twice. Callahan deployed to the South Pacific in July 1943, assigned to 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marine Division. The landing at Empress Augusta Bay on November 1st involved 14,000 Marines. By November 3rd, they had established a defensive perimeter. Callahan's first week was spent in conventional infantry combat against light but determined Japanese resistance. On November 8th, tragedy struck. His spotter, Corporal James Rivera, was killed by a Japanese sniper while conducting reconnaissance. Rivera had raised his binoculars for 3 seconds to identify a target. The Japanese sniper, concealed in a tree platform 600 yards distant, made a perfect headshot. Callahan spent 30 minutes motionless, processing grief and rage. He studied the jungle, analyzing angles, calculating positions. Rather than calling for artillery or attempting immediate revenge, Callahan withdrew. He carried Rivera's body back to friendly lines and requested permission to hunt the Japanese sniper using unconventional methods. Captain Morrison, desperate to reduce casualties, agreed. That night, Callahan sat in his foxhole studying the problem. The Japanese sniper had perfect concealment. He couldn't spot him with binoculars. Direct assault was suicide. Artillery would be wasted. He needed to force the enemy sniper to reveal his position without exposing himself. As Callahan ate his evening C-ration chicken noodle soup heated over a fuel tablet, inspiration struck. The can, opened with his P-38 can opener, caught the last rays of sunset. A brilliant reflection flashed across his foxhole. Callahan stared at the can, then at the jungle, then back at the can. 15 minutes later, he was explaining his idea to Morrison. You want to use soup cans as bait? Not bait. Distraction, confusion. The Japanese train to spot movement, sound, muzzle flash. They don't train for random light reflections. If I can make them curious, they'll shift position to investigate. That's when I shoot. Morrison considered the proposal. You'd need multiple cans at different positions. Create a pattern they can't ignore. Morrison approved the mission. Callahan would work with a security team of 4 riflemen and demonstrate the technique on targets of opportunity before attempting to hunt the specific sniper who killed Rivera. November 9th saw the first test. Callahan positioned himself 300 yards behind the front lines, overlooking a clearing used by Japanese troops moving between positions. He'd spent 2 hours before dawn planting 5 soup cans on stakes at various positions, each angled to catch morning sun. At 06:15 hours, the sun rose. Callahan, working methodically, adjusted each can using a string system he'd rigged, creating specific light flashes aimed at Japanese positions. The first flash lasted 3 seconds, then darkness. 30 seconds later, a flash from a different position. For 20 minutes, nothing happened. Then a Japanese soldier emerged partially from the tree line, trying to locate the source of the mysterious light signals. He assumed American forces were using mirrors for tactical communication. He raised binoculars to investigate. Callahan's shot struck him in the chest at 480 yards. The Japanese soldier fell. Callahan immediately withdrew, moving 300 yards south to a completely different position. The soup cans remained, still creating random flashes. 30 minutes later, Japanese mortar fire saturated the area where Callahan had been. Over 50 rounds fell on empty jungle. That afternoon, Callahan refined his technique. He punched small holes in strategic positions to create different reflection patterns. He painted some cans with mud to dull certain surfaces while keeping others shiny. He developed a remote adjustment system using string and simple pulleys. The evening briefing at battalion headquarters drew unexpected attention. Lieutenant Colonel Michael O'Brien listened with increasing interest. We've identified at least 15 Japanese sniper positions in this sector. They're killing 3 to 5 Marines daily. If your technique works, we could turn the tables. How many kills do you think you can realistically achieve? Callahan considered the question. If I can set up proper positions, and if the Japanese don't adapt, maybe 20 to 30 in a week. That's assuming optimal conditions. O'Brien made his decision. You have 5 days. I'll assign you a dedicated security team. Your only mission is eliminating enemy snipers using whatever methods work. After 5 days, we'll assess effectiveness. November 10th began with extensive reconnaissance. Callahan identified 7 primary positions with clear sight lines to known Japanese positions approximately 400 to 800 yards distant. Each position required different soup can configurations based on sun angle, enemy positions, and available concealment. The first success came at 0745 hours. Callahan had positioned 6 soup cans in a rough semicircle facing Japanese lines. Using his string system, he created a specific sequence: flash from position 1 for 5 seconds, flash from position 3 for 3 seconds. This pattern repeated 3 times. Through his scope, Callahan watched Japanese positions 640 yards distant. After the pattern repeated, 2 Japanese soldiers emerged from a concealed bunker entrance, clearly discussing the light signals. One pointed toward the soup can positions, the other raised binoculars. Callahan had positioned himself 90 degrees off axis from the soup cans, creating perfect ambush geometry. The Japanese soldiers were focused entirely on the can positions, never imagining the real threat came from the flank. His first shot hit the soldier with binoculars. The second shot hit his companion. Both were clean kills. By November 10th evening, Callahan had achieved 9 confirmed kills using variations of the soup can technique. Japanese forces trained to detect conventional threats had no doctrine for handling weaponized distraction. November 11th brought the encounter that would define the entire operation. Callahan had identified a particular Japanese position that appeared to house their primary sniper. This position, camouflaged in a large tree approximately 700 yards east of Marine lines, had been responsible for at least 6 American casualties. The Japanese sniper in that tree was exceptional. He never fired twice from the same position. He showed perfect fire discipline. Marine counter-sniper efforts had failed repeatedly. Callahan spent November 10th studying the tree. He determined the Japanese sniper had at least 3 different firing positions in that single tree, connected by concealed platforms. The challenge was forcing this skilled operator to expose himself. Callahan realized standard soup can techniques wouldn't work. This sniper was too experienced to investigate random light flashes. He needed something more compelling. The solution came from understanding Japanese tactical priorities. Their snipers were also intelligence gatherers. They documented American positions, troop movements, equipment. What would force such a sniper to break concealment? Callahan developed what he called the command post gambit. He positioned soup cans to create light patterns that mimicked American signal communication, but he added theater. He had his security team move conspicuously, carrying radio equipment, map cases, and other items suggesting a forward command post. Then he positioned his soup cans to create light flashes that appeared to signal between this command post and frontline positions. From the Japanese sniper's perspective, this was intelligence gold. A forward American command post conducting visual signal communication suggested vulnerability. The sniper would have to investigate. Callahan positioned himself 500 yards north of the fake command post, with clear line of sight to the suspected sniper tree. At 0930 hours, Callahan began his light show. His security team performed their roles perfectly, moving with purpose, appearing to coordinate defensive positions. For 90 minutes, nothing happened. Then at 11:15 hours, Callahan detected movement in the target tree. A branch shifted slightly in a way inconsistent with wind. Years of hunting elk had taught him to recognize these micro-movements. Through his 8-power scope, Callahan scanned the tree systematically. He found it at 11:23 hours, a small opening in the foliage approximately 15 inches wide, positioned for perfect view of the fake command post. As Callahan watched, the opening darkened slightly. Someone had moved into position behind it. Callahan made microscopic adjustments. He controlled his breathing, slowing his heart rate. The range was 712 yards. Wind was approximately 8 miles per hour from the southeast. He'd need to hold 2 feet right and aim 30 inches high to compensate. At 11:27 hours, the Japanese sniper's rifle barrel emerged through the foliage. Just 6 inches of steel, but enough to confirm the exact firing position. Callahan waited. The barrel steadied. The Japanese sniper was preparing his shot. Callahan fired. The .30-06 round arced through humid jungle air. 712 yards. Approximately 2 seconds of flight time. The bullet struck exactly where Callahan had aimed, passing through the foliage opening and hitting the Japanese sniper in the head. Through his scope, Callahan saw the rifle barrel drop. Then a body fell through the tree branches, crashing through multiple platforms before hitting the ground. Marines searching the position later that day found extensive sniper equipment and a logbook documenting 53 American casualties over 3 months. They also found the body of a Japanese sergeant identified as one of the 6th Division's most experienced snipers. November 11th afternoon brought an unexpected complication. Japanese forces, having lost their primary sniper and several other soldiers to mysterious circumstances, adjusted their tactics. They stopped investigating random light flashes. They pulled back sentries. They enforced stricter fire discipline. Callahan realized he'd forced adaptation. The soup can trick had worked so well that the enemy was now actively countering it by refusing to investigate anything suspicious. The solution required escalation. If the Japanese wouldn't investigate light flashes, Callahan needed to create situations they couldn't ignore. November 12th began with Callahan deploying 8 soup cans instead of his usual 5 or 6. He positioned them to create what appeared to be a coordinated signal network between multiple American positions. The pattern suggested major troop movements or attack preparation. This wasn't just random flashing lights. This was simulated tactical communication that Japanese intelligence couldn't afford to ignore. The technique worked. By midday November 12th, Callahan had achieved 16 confirmed kills. Japanese forces, desperate to understand American intentions, sent out reconnaissance patrols and observation teams. Each investigation created opportunities. The Japanese battalion commander facing Callahan's sector, Major Takeshi Yamamoto, grew increasingly frustrated. His war diary, captured after the battle, documented his confusion. Enemy employs unknown signaling methods. Attempts to locate signal sources result in casualties. Sniper fire of exceptional accuracy eliminates observers. Unable to determine if signals are genuine tactical communication or deception. Morale declining. November 13th saw Callahan's highest single-day total. 27 confirmed kills using increasingly sophisticated variations of the soup can technique. He developed multiple gambits. The command post deception. The patrol signal gambit, suggesting American patrols were coordinating movements. The artillery observer simulation, creating light patterns that suggested forward observers spotting artillery targets. Each gambit played on Japanese tactical fears and intelligence priorities. They couldn't ignore potential threats. Investigation became mandatory. Exposure became inevitable. Death followed. The psychological impact on Japanese forces exceeded the casualty count. Soldiers became paranoid about any unusual visual phenomena. A captured Japanese diary from this period revealed the effect. The Americans employed demon magic. Light appears from nowhere, drawing our men into death. Officers forbid investigation, but intelligence demands reconnaissance. 3 men in my squad dead investigating light signals. I no longer trust my eyes. November 14th brought the technique to its peak effectiveness. Callahan achieved 31 confirmed kills. He'd perfected timing, positioning, and pattern creation. His security team operated seamlessly. The soup cans, now numbering over 20 in various positions, created a web of deceptions that Japanese forces couldn't navigate safely. The crowning achievement came at 14:30 hours. Callahan had positioned soup cans to suggest a major American assault was being coordinated. Japanese forces, believing a major attack was imminent, repositioned multiple units. This repositioning required movement across open areas. Officers had to expose themselves to coordinate defensive preparations. Over 90 minutes, Callahan and his security team engaged targets of opportunity with devastating precision. 11 Japanese soldiers fell, including 2 officers whose deaths created command confusion that degraded the entire defensive sector's effectiveness. That evening, Lieutenant Colonel O'Brien summoned Callahan to battalion headquarters. "Your 5 days are up tomorrow. Current count is 103 confirmed kills, with secondary observers verifying 89 of them. That's not just effective, that's revolutionary." O'Brien continued, "Division wants a full report on your techniques. They're considering implementing soup tactics across the entire Marine Corps. How do you feel about training other snipers?" Callahan considered the question. "Sir, it's not just the cans. It's understanding enemy psychology, knowing what they can't ignore, forcing them into impossible choices. The cans are just tools. The real weapon is thinking 3 moves ahead." November 15th opened with deteriorating weather. Heavy clouds obscured the sun, eliminating the soup can technique's primary mechanism. But Callahan had prepared for this contingency. If light reflection wouldn't work, he'd use sound. Marine Supply had provided empty ammunition cans, larger and more resonant than soup cans. He positioned these in trees and bushes with pebbles inside, creating simple mechanical noisemakers. Using string systems, he could shake the cans remotely, creating sounds that suggested American movement or equipment operation. The technique worked differently, but achieved similar results. Japanese forces investigating unexpected sounds exposed themselves. By midday, Callahan had added 9 more confirmed kills. The final kill came at 15:45 hours. A Japanese officer moved between positions, coordinating defensive preparations. Callahan had positioned sound-making ammunition cans to create a distraction pattern. As Japanese soldiers investigated the sounds, their officer stood partially exposed, consulting a map. Callahan's shot at 630 yards struck the officer in the chest. At 1600 hours, exactly 5 days after beginning the soup can operation, Callahan withdrew from the front lines. His final count stood at 112 confirmed kills, with observers verifying 97. The intelligence assessment filed on November 16th documented the operation's effectiveness. Summary: Sergeant Callahan employed innovative deception techniques to neutralize enemy sniper and observation positions with unprecedented effectiveness. Using improvised light reflectors and sound devices, he forced enemy personnel to expose themselves for observation and targeting. Results: 112 confirmed enemy casualties, 57 verified as sniper, observer, or communication personnel. 19 confirmed as officers or senior enlisted. Estimated 300 enemy man-hours wasted investigating false signatures. Degraded enemy intelligence gathering capability by estimated 60 to 70%. Psychological impact on enemy forces, significant. Methodology merits immediate documentation for potential wider implementation. Recommend Sergeant Callahan be reassigned to training duties to disseminate techniques. Also recommend immediate promotion and decoration. The Japanese reaction revealed the operation's impact from their perspective. Major Yamamoto's final diary entry before his death 3 days later was revealing. The American demon sniper has destroyed my battalion's effectiveness. 23 men killed investigating inexplicable phenomena. Officers afraid to expose themselves. Soldiers refuse reconnaissance missions. Morale collapsed. Cannot maintain defensive posture under these conditions. A Japanese intelligence report attempted to analyze the situation. Enemy appears to have developed new sniper tactics employing sophisticated deception. Light signals and sound devices draw our forces into prepared ambush zones. Conventional counter-sniper doctrine, ineffective. Recommend all units enforce strict discipline regarding investigation of unusual phenomena. This Japanese report revealed Callahan's ultimate success. He'd forced the enemy into an impossible choice: investigate potential threats and die, or ignore them and operate blind. Either way, Japanese operational effectiveness degraded. Thomas Callahan spent 2 weeks recovering at a rear area base. Marine medical officers noted symptoms consistent with combat exhaustion. 5 days of constant high-stress operations had extracted a severe psychological toll. During recovery, Callahan wrote detailed documentation of his techniques at the request of Marine Corps headquarters. His after-action report, titled Employment of Improvised Deception Devices in Counter-Sniper Operations, became required reading at Marine sniper schools. Excerpt from Callahan's report. The Soupkin technique succeeds because it exploits enemy psychology rather than defeats enemy equipment. Japanese forces are trained to observe, analyze, and respond to tactical signatures. By creating false signatures, we force response cycles that expose them to engagement. The key is understanding what the enemy cannot ignore. By January 1944, Marine sniper teams across the Pacific were implementing variations of Callahan's techniques. The improvised light reflectors became so common that supply officers began issuing polished metal plates specifically designed for the purpose. These mirror plates became standard sniper equipment through the Pacific campaign's remainder. Callahan never returned to frontline sniper duties. In January 1944, he received orders to Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton as a sniper school instructor. For the war's remainder, he trained over 400 Marine snipers, emphasizing creativity, psychology, and the importance of thinking beyond conventional tactics. His teaching methodology broke from the traditional military instruction. Rather than emphasizing marksmanship alone, Callahan taught conceptual thinking. He'd present students with tactical problems, then say, "The rifle is just a tool. Your real weapon is creativity. The enemy trains to counter known threats. Your job is becoming an unknown threat." The Soupkin trick itself became legendary within the Marine sniper community. Stories circulated, often exaggerated, about Callahan's 5 days on Bougainville. The truth, impressive enough without embellishment, became obscured by mythology. Post-war analysis by military historians assessed the operation's true impact. The consensus was that Callahan's innovation, while tactically significant, wasn't strategically decisive. However, the psychological impact and doctrinal influence justify the operation's legendary status. Callahan proved that individual soldiers could develop tactics that changed operational approaches. Japanese training manuals captured in 1945 showed they developed specific countermeasures. One document mandated strict protocols. Do not investigate unusual light phenomena without officer authorization. Conduct all investigations using minimum personnel, from maximum cover. Assume all unusual sounds or enemy deception until proven otherwise. These countermeasures validated Callahan's achievement. When an enemy develops specific doctrine to counter your technique, you've succeeded in changing their behavior. Thomas Callahan survived the war without physical injury. He was promoted to gunnery sergeant in March 1945 and received the Navy Cross. The citation read in part, "For extraordinary heroism and distinguished service while serving as a scout sniper, Gunnery Sergeant Callahan employed exceptional tactical innovation to neutralize enemy positions with devastating effectiveness." Callahan left active duty in November 1945, returning to Montana. He rarely discussed his wartime service publicly. In a 1978 interview, he reflected on the soup can operation. "People focus on the kill count. That's not what mattered. What mattered was showing that individual initiative could change outcomes. The Marine Corps gave me a mission and trusted me to find solutions. That trust, that willingness to let a sergeant try crazy ideas, that's what won the war." The interviewer asked if he felt proud of his achievement. Callahan paused. "I'm proud we won. I'm proud I helped Marines survive by eliminating threats. But I'm not proud of killing. Every one of those 112 men was somebody's son, maybe somebody's father. They fought for their country, same as me. Necessary doesn't mean proud. It means necessary." Callahan died in May 2003 at age 81 in Missoula, Montana. His obituary mentioned his Marine service, but focused on his 40-year career as a high school teacher and coach. Former students remembered him as patient, encouraging, and always emphasizing creative problem-solving. The soup can trick lives on in military training and tactical literature. Modern military deception operations trace conceptual lineage to Callahan's innovation. While technology has advanced, the fundamental principle remains unchanged: force the enemy to respond to false signatures, creating exposure opportunities that can be exploited. The Marine Corps Scout Sniper School at Camp Pendleton includes a dedicated class on historical sniper innovations. Callahan's soup can technique receives detailed coverage. Students learn not just the mechanics, but the underlying philosophy. Observe the enemy, understand their priorities, identify what they cannot ignore, then weaponize their response patterns. Contemporary applications of Callahan's principles extend beyond sniping. Military deception operations, psychological warfare, and counterintelligence activities all employ variations of his core concept, create false signatures that force enemy responses, then exploit those responses. In 2015, the Marine Corps published an updated sniper manual that included a section titled Historical Foundations of Deception Operations. Callahan's photograph appears alongside text stating, "Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Callahan demonstrated that effectiveness in combat stems not from superior equipment, but from superior thinking." His employment of improvised deception devices on Bougainville exemplified the Marine Corps values of innovation, initiative, and mission accomplishment through unconventional means. The broader lessons from Callahan's operation extend beyond military application. First, constraints breed innovation. Callahan succeeded partly because he lacked resources. Second, observation precedes action. Callahan spent more time studying enemy behavior than shooting. Third, psychology trumps technology. The soup cans weren't sophisticated, but they exploited sophisticated understanding of human behavior. Fourth, teaching multiplies impact. Callahan trained 400 snipers, multiplying his influence exponentially. Fifth, success requires institutional support. The Marine Corps trusted a sergeant to experiment with unconventional tactics. Thomas Callahan didn't invent sniper warfare or military deception, but he synthesized existing concepts in novel ways, adapted them to specific circumstances, and achieved results that exceeded expectations. This creativity under pressure, this willingness to try unconventional approaches, This humble acknowledgement of war's moral complexity, these qualities elevate his story beyond mere tactical interest. Today, the original Springfield rifle Callahan used on Bougainville resides in the National Museum of the Marine Corps in Triangle, Virginia. Displayed alongside it are 3 soup cans, dented and rusted, recovered from the battlefield in 2007. The placard reads, "These ordinary objects, transformed by extraordinary thinking, represent the innovative spirit that defined American fighting forces in World War II." Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Callahan proved that success often comes not from having the best tools, but from using available tools in the best ways. The 5 days from November 10th through 15th, 1943, witnessed a demonstration of individual initiative that changed doctrine. 112 confirmed enemy casualties resulted not from superior firepower, but from creativity applied to discarded trash. In an era of smart weapons and precision-guided munitions, Callahan's story reminds us that the human factor remains decisive. Technology amplifies capability, but creativity defines possibility. The Marine sergeant who turned soup cans into weapons proved that innovation matters more than equipment, that thinking beats spending, and that sometimes the best answer to a complex problem is absurdly simple. Japanese forces on Bougainville learned this lesson through painful casualties. They faced an enemy who refused to fight predictably, who weaponized light and sound, who turned their own caution against them. The psychological damage, the hesitation, the paranoia, these lingered even after countermeasures were implemented. The final irony was its simplicity. No secret weapon, no advanced technology, just understanding applied with precision. The Japanese knew Americans possessed industrial might and material abundance. They never imagined American ingenuity would weaponize garbage. That failure of imagination cost them 112 soldiers in 5 days. More importantly, it cost them operational confidence in a critical sector. When troops cannot trust their own observations, when every anomaly might be lethal deception, combat effectiveness collapses. Callahan achieved this not through superior firepower, but through superior thinking. The legacy endures. Every military force that studies his operation learns the same lessons. Understand your enemy, exploit their psychology, innovate constantly, teach what you learn. These principles remain relevant wherever humans fight. Thomas Callahan's soup can trick stands as testament to American military culture at its best. Decentralized command that trusted junior leaders, willingness to try unconventional approaches, rapid adoption of successful innovations. This culture proved decisive in World War II and remains America's military advantage today. In final tribute to Thomas Callahan, perhaps his own words capture the essence best, from his final interview in 2002. "I didn't do anything special. I just looked at the problem differently. The enemy was good. They were disciplined, trained, dangerous. I couldn't beat them at their own game. So I changed the game, that's all. Change the game. Find advantage where none exists. Make the enemy fight your fight, not theirs." That's what the soup cans did. They changed the game. Those words, humble yet profound, epitomized the innovation that defined American victory in the Pacific. Thomas Michael Callahan, Marine sniper, teacher, innovator. The man who weaponized sunlight and turned soup cans into instruments of victory. His 5 days on Bougainville proved that sometimes the best weapon isn't the newest or most powerful. Sometimes it's the one nobody else thought to use. The jungle has reclaimed the battlefield now. The soup cans have rusted away. The soldiers are mostly gone. But the lessons remain, preserved in doctrine, taught in schools, remembered by those who understand that warfare's ultimate weapon is the human mind applied with courage and creativity to the problems at hand. That's how an American Marine sergeant changed tactical doctrine with garbage, ingenuity, and the willingness to try something crazy. That's how you win wars. Not with bigger guns, with better thinking.